Mary sat quietly in her living room as her 3 children, John, Linda, and Paul, stood over her with confident smiles. John slid a 4-page life agreement across her coffee table as if he was handing her a gift instead of a trap. "Mom, this is just to help you," he said softly. Linda added, "We only want the best for you." Mary smiled, picked up the pen, and signed without reading a line. Their eyes lit up with victory, but they had no idea what she knew. "Thank you, Mom," Paul whispered. Mary only nodded. Inside she whispered, "You just handed me everything I need." 7 days earlier, Mary had buried her husband, David, the man she'd shared 42 years with. Lung cancer had taken him slowly, painfully, despite his stubborn promises that he would never leave her first. Half the town came to the funeral because in a small place like Mildfield, everybody knew everybody. Mary stood quietly, accepting hugs and whispered prayers. John gave a speech about family staying strong, while Linda kept telling guests how worried she was about her mother. Mary listened, silent, watching her children perform grief the way actors perform lines. Something in her heart already knew trouble was coming. 2 days after the funeral, John showed up at Mary's door at 8 a.m. carrying pastries and coffee he hadn't bought for her since he was a teenager. "How are you holding up, Mom?" he asked, settling into David's armchair like it belonged to him. "I'm managing," Mary replied. John nodded slowly. "Mom, we've been thinking. You shouldn't carry everything alone anymore." Mary felt the warning bells. Whenever her children said we instead of I, trouble followed. "What does that mean, John?" she asked. He cleared his throat. "Just solutions. To make life easier for you. We want to help." Later that afternoon, Linda arrived with a casserole and the same soft voice John had used. "Mom, this house is too big. You shouldn't be alone here." The next morning, Paul came with groceries and repeated their exact words, like they'd practiced in the mirror. For 4 days, all 3 circled her with fake concern, carefully chosen questions and calculated smiles. Mary never challenged them. She listened, nodded, and let them believe she was slowly folding under their kindness. But inside she watched every move, every shared glance, every repeated sentence. She knew exactly what they were planning. On the 7th day, they arrived together, dressed like they were attending a work meeting. John placed a briefcase on the table. Linda carried flowers. Paul smiled too calmly. "Mom," John began, "we need a serious conversation." He opened the briefcase, pulled out the life agreement, and slid it to her. "It's for your protection," Linda said sweetly. "You'll be comfortable. We'll take care of everything." Mary read their eyes, not the papers. She saw greed, impatience, and the belief that she was already weak. Instead of arguing, she picked up the pen and signed. The room fell silent. They had expected a fight. They had no idea she was beginning a lesson they would never forget. The next morning, Mary called Mr. Carter, the private lawyer she had quietly hired 6 months earlier when David's health worsened. She didn't call the family lawyer. She knew he would run straight to John. "Mr. Carter," she said calmly, "it's time to begin what we planned." When she arrived at his office, he reviewed the agreement her children had given her. "They think you're confused," he said. Mary nodded. "Good. Let them keep thinking that." Together they prepared a trust, moved assets, and secured everything her children believed they could control. By the time she left, the real game had begun. That evening, John called again, his voice full of authority that made Mary's skin crawl. "Mom, we've been thinking," he began. "You should stay with Linda for a while. Just until we organize everything." Mary let her voice wobble gently. "Do you think that's necessary?" John answered quickly. "It's better if we keep an eye on things." "Keep an eye," she repeated silently. Out loud she said, "All right, dear. When should I move?" John didn't hide his relief. "This weekend is perfect." After the call, Mary poured herself a glass of David's favorite wine and whispered, "Let the show begin." Moving into Linda's house felt like stepping behind enemy lines, but Mary smiled politely the entire time. Linda showed her the beige guest room and said, "Make yourself at home, Mom." Brad added, "We're here for you." Mary thanked them sweetly while secretly activating her tiny recorder, hidden inside what looked like a simple hearing aid. She listened, studied, and waited. Over breakfast, Linda began scheduling her day like Mary was a child. "Mom, I made a doctor's appointment for you." "Just a check." Mary nodded softly. "Thank you, dear." Inside she whispered, "Keep talking. I need all of this recorded." The next day, Michael and Paul arrived with folders and laptops. "Mom, we found some accounts Dad left behind," Paul said proudly. "There's more money than you realized." They showed her the 401k, the pension, the small savings, about $400,000 total. Mary widened her eyes just enough. "Oh my. I had no idea." Their smiles grew. John slid another set of papers toward her. "We want to organize everything for you. Simplify things." Paul added, "You don't need stress right now." Mary picked up the pen again. "If you boys think it's best," she signed slowly, feeding their confidence while hiding her smile. That night, Mary sat in the guest room listening to her recordings. She heard Linda whisper to Brad, "She's more confused than I expected. This will be easier than we thought." Brad replied, "Good. Once everything's in our name, we can move fast." Mary paused the playback and breathed deeply, not in sadness but in preparation. She uploaded the audio files to Mr. Carter's secure system. His reply came quickly, "Perfect. Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Mary lay back on the pillow, her mind sharper than it had been in weeks. Her children thought they were gaining control. They had no idea they were handing her the proof she needed. The next morning, Linda drove Mary to see Dr. Peterson, the Dr. Brad had quietly arranged. Mary immediately sensed the dismissive tone in his voice. "Mrs. Mary," he said without looking up, "your daughter tells me you've been struggling." Linda added quickly, "She forgets things, doctor, little things." Mary folded her hands gently. "I feel fine," she replied. Dr. Peterson scribbled something on his chart. "That's common," he said. "Confused patients often deny symptoms." He gave her simple memory tests, which she pretended to struggle with just enough to support Linda's claims. When the appointment ended, Mary politely thanked him, already knowing the recording would be useful later. Later that afternoon, as Mary sat quietly in the living room, her neighbor Janet walked in without waiting for permission. "Mary, what is going on?" she demanded. Linda stiffened. "We're helping Mom through a hard time," she insisted. Janet folded her arms. "Funny. She didn't need help last week when she handled a funeral, insurance papers, and 2 lawyers." Linda swallowed hard. "Things changed." "Really?" Janet asked. "Because she seemed sharper than me when we talked about David's insurance." Linda's eyes widened. "What insurance?" Mary quickly stepped in. "It's nothing, Linda. Just small details." But the damage was done. Linda now smelled money she didn't know existed. When Janet left, Linda rounded on Mary almost instantly. "Mom, are you hiding money from us?" Mary let her face fall in embarrassment. "I didn't want to worry you. It was just a small amount from David's job." "How much is small?" Linda pressed. Mary sighed softly. "I don't remember exactly. Maybe 50,000. Linda inhaled sharply. "Mom, this is why we need to manage things." Later that evening, thinking Mary couldn't hear, Linda whispered on the phone, "If she forgot $50,000, there might be more. We have to dig deeper." Mary turned off her recorder, shook her head, and whispered, "And so your true intentions finally appear." Over the next week, Mary watched each child transform. John became controlling, Linda acted like a strict nurse, and Paul behaved like her personal accountant. They simplified her bank cards, limited her spending, and reviewed her purchases like she was in kindergarten. One night, during a family dinner, they finally dropped their masks. "Once we sell the house," John whispered after a few drinks, "we can clear about 400,000. Linda smiled dreamily. "I can redo my kitchen," Paul added, I'll finally get that boat. Mary kept her face calm, but her heart hardened. Her children weren't helping her. They were preparing to profit from her. But the moment that confirmed everything came from the kitchen. Mary heard her grandchildren, Emma and Jake, whispering. Are they really stealing Grandma's house? Emma asked. Jake sighed. Looks like it. She's not confused. She helped me with history homework yesterday. Emma frowned. Then why are they treating her like she's helpless? Their voices carried pain Mary hadn't expected. She wiped the corner of her eye. Not from sadness, but from the heaviness of knowing her grandchildren saw what their parents refused to hide. She pressed save on the recording. Phase 2 was complete. Her children had spoken their truth out loud, and she had captured every single word. That night, Mary lay awake in Linda's guest bed, the small recorder still warm in her hand. She replayed the voices, her children dividing her home like poker chips, planning how to manage her life, dreaming about kitchen remodels and boats. She stared at the ceiling, whispering, "It's time." The next morning she called Mr. Carter. "We're ready for phase 3, she said calmly. He didn't sound surprised. "I'll prepare everything. And Mary, you've gathered more evidence than most clients ever manage." Mary smiled to herself. They underestimated the wrong woman. The battle lines were drawn. The teaching was about to begin. 2 days later, Linda opened her front door to find Mr. Carter standing beside Mary, holding a briefcase and a notary. "Mom, what is this?" Linda asked, her voice tight. Mary kept her tone soft. "Sweetheart, I just need help understanding what I signed." Mr. Carter spread documents on the dining table. "Mrs. Mary is revoking all powers of attorney. She is restoring full legal control of her affairs." Linda's face paled. "That's unnecessary," she protested. Mr. Carter replied, "The evaluation will determine that." "Evaluation," Linda repeated. Mary folded her hands gently. "Yes, dear. If I'm truly confused, we should prove it properly." John arrived within 30 minutes, flustered and breathing hard. "Mom, you're making this complicated," he said, pulling out a chair. "We're helping you." Mr. Carter looked him straight in the eyes. "Helping," he repeated. "According to your mother, financial decisions were made without clear understanding on her part." John stiffened. "She signed everything willingly." Mr. Carter nodded calmly. "Which is why we're requesting a full mental capacity evaluation by an independent specialist." Mary looked at John with soft confusion. "It might give you peace of mind, dear." John swallowed. He couldn't object, not without admitting he feared the truth. 2 days later, Mary sat in the peaceful office of Dr. Margaret Hayes, a geriatric psychiatrist known for being thorough. Dr. Hayes smiled kindly. "Mary, this evaluation is simply to understand your abilities clearly. No pressure." Mary nodded. "I understand." For 3 hours, Dr. Hayes tested her memory, reasoning, decision-making, finances, timelines, patterns, everything. Mary answered confidently, never missing a single detail. When they finished, Dr. Hayes folded her hands. "Mary, you are not only competent, you're above average for your age. There is no sign of cognitive impairment." Mary smiled, relief washing through her. Perfect, she thought. Let's see them explain this. That afternoon in Mr. Carter's conference room, John and Linda sat stiffly as Dr. Hayes read her findings. "Mary is fully competent," she said clearly. "There is no dementia, confusion, or decline." Linda's mouth opened slowly. "But she forgets things." Dr. Hayes shook her head. "Grief is not incompetence. Temporary distraction is not confusion." John tried again. "She signed things without reading." Dr. Hayes replied calmly, "That is a personal choice, not a symptom." Mr. Carter closed his folder. "Now we must review the financial decisions you made for her." Mary watched her children's faces fall. The real truth was finally standing in the room with them. Mr. Carter placed a thick folder on the table. "Now," he said, Let's discuss the financial activity made under the power of attorney. John shifted uncomfortably. Linda clasped her hands. Mr. Carter opened the folder. Within 48 hours of gaining authority, $15,000 was transferred to pay a credit card that belongs to John's wife. Linda blinked, shocked. John stammered. It was a mistake. Mr. Carter continued. And $5,000 was transferred to Paul's business account, also labeled as consulting. Mary watched quietly. Her children couldn't look at her. The silence was heavier than any words she could have spoken. A forensic accountant, Mr. Chen, entered with more documents. These payments, he said, were not for Mary's benefit. They were for your personal gain. Linda whispered. We were going to pay it back. Mr. Chen lifted an eyebrow. With what agreement? With what timeline? And with whose permission? Linda swallowed hard, unable to answer. John stared at the table. We were helping her. Mr. Chen calmly replied. Help doesn't involve draining someone's accounts without their knowledge. Mary felt a small ache in her chest, not from sadness, but from the weight of truth finally laid bare. The children she raised were now seeing themselves clearly. Mr. Carter leaned forward. Mrs. Mary has clear evidence of misconduct. Your actions fall under elder financial exploitation. In Kansas, that is a felony. Linda gasped. John whispered. Felony? Mr. Carter nodded. Yes. And with the evaluation proving your mother is mentally capable, your actions appear deliberate. Mary's voice was gentle, almost soft. Children, I trusted you. Linda broke into tears. Mom, we never meant. You meant to take control, Mary replied quietly. And you did. The weight of her words filled the room. For the first time, John covered his face with both hands, realizing the severity of what they had done. Then Mary said the words that changed everything. Before I decide what to do, there is something you need to understand. She looked at Mr. Carter and nodded. He opened another folder, thicker, heavier. Your mother, he began, owns 630 acres of agricultural land worth nearly $3 million. John's head snapped up. Linda's tears froze. Paul whispered, What? Mr. Carter continued. She also has an investment portfolio valued at over $3 million. Mary watched their faces crumble. They had been fighting over crumbs, never knowing the real estate lay untouched, protected and hidden. Their greed had blinded them completely. Mary stood slowly, her voice steady. You tried to take $400,000 from a woman you believed was weak. She looked each child in the eyes. But you never asked if your father and I saved more. You never asked who I was before grief. Linda whispered. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Mary replied softly. Because I needed to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. John lowered his head. Paul wiped his face. The truth was clearer than sunlight. If they had succeeded, they would have stolen millions. And they knew it. Detective Lisa Rodriguez stepped forward, placing her badge calmly on the table. The room went still. I've reviewed the evidence, she said, her tone firm. This is a legally significant case. Elder financial abuse, organized by family members, is a serious crime. John swallowed hard. Linda's voice trembled. Detective, we didn't know. That, Detective Rodriguez replied, does not change what happened. Paul whispered. What happens now? Mr. Carter nodded toward Mary. Your mother decides whether charges move forward. All eyes turned to her. Mary took a deep breath, ready to deliver the lesson her children had unknowingly signed up for. Mary sat down again, folding her hands neatly. I haven't made my final decision yet, she said quietly. Linda reached out as if trying to hold on to something slipping away. Mom, please. Mary raised her hand gently. Not now. You speak when I finish. Linda sat back silent. You will each write a full confession, Mary continued. Not excuses, not explanations. The truth. John stared at her, stunned. You want us to put everything in writing? Yes, Mary replied. I need to know that you understand what you did. Detective Rodriguez nodded approvingly. A written admission is standard in restorative agreements. And there is more, Mary added. The children tensed. You will pay back every dollar you took, Mary said, her voice calm. And you will add a 20% penalty for the pain you caused. Paul looked pained. Mom, we don't have that kind of money. Then you should not have taken what wasn't yours, Mary replied. Mr. Carter slid a paper across the table. The total, including penalties, is $31,000 plus 20%. John's shoulders slumped. Linda covered her face. Paul whispered, How did we end up here? Detective Rodriguez answered for Mary. By choosing greed over honesty. Mary wasn't finished. You will also be removed from my will, she said. The words dropped like stones. John's voice cracked. Mom, no. Mary shook her head. Actions have consequences. You tried to steal my future. So you've lost yours. Linda sobbed. Mom, please. No, Mary said firmly. You need to understand the difference between love and control. She looked at Mr. Carter. Prepare the paperwork. He nodded. Already done. The children sat in silent devastation. Detective Rodriguez closed her folder. This agreement is merciful, she said. The alternative is prison. The message was clear. This was the gentle option. Finally, Mary walked to the window overlooking the yard where her children once played. You're lucky, she said quietly. Lucky that I still love you. They lifted their heads slowly. Mary continued. If you meet every condition, confession, repayment, apology, and removal from my estate, I will stop the criminal charges. John whispered. And if we don't? Mary turned, eyes steady. Then Detective Rodriguez will handle it. Linda sobbed harder. Paul wiped tears from his eyes. The room was silent except for their breathing. Mary had given them a choice, accountability or ruin. For the first time in years she felt strong again. The next morning, John, Linda, and Paul returned to Mr. Carter's office looking exhausted and shaken. Each carried a handwritten letter. John read his first, voice trembling. I admit I tried to control Mom's finances without her permission. I used her trust for my benefit, and I am responsible. Linda's hands shook as she read her own confession, tears dripping onto the paper. Paul barely made it through his admission, stopping twice to breathe. Mary listened silently. These were no longer the confident children who came with legal papers. These were adults finally seeing the weight of their actions. After the letters were signed and notarized, Mr. Carter brought out the restitution agreement. $31,000 plus penalty, he said. Payments must begin immediately. Linda whispered. We'll figure it out. John nodded weakly. Paul looked as if the world rested on his shoulders. This is fair, Mary said softly. What you took must be returned. They all nodded, unable to argue anymore. Detective Rodriguez signed the final page. Once payments begin, I'll pause the criminal report, she said. But if you default, I resume immediately. The message was sharp and final. The children understood. Mercy was not guaranteed, it had to be earned. When the legal documents were complete, Mr. Carter handed Mary a final folder. These are your updated estate plans, he said. Your children are officially removed from inheritance. Mary nodded without hesitation. John whispered, Mom, please reconsider. Mary looked at him gently but firmly. No, she said. Love does not erase consequences. Linda cried quietly. Paul stared at the floor. They now knew exactly what losing her trust meant. Mary stood. You didn't lose your inheritance today, she said softly. You lost it the moment you decided I was weak. None of them could argue. The truth was too clear. Mary then surprised everyone. But I'm not ending our relationship, she said. John looked up confused. You're not. You are still my children, Mary said. But you will rebuild trust through actions, not promises. Linda wiped her tears. Paul whispered. What do we do now? Mary replied, work, learn, repair. Detective Rodriguez added, and understand the harm you caused. Mary continued, our family will change if you choose to grow. Her words landed softly but with power. For the first time, hope flickered across her children's faces. They had consequences to face, but also a road to redemption. 2 weeks later, Mary returned to her ranch, land her children never knew existed. The air smelled of open fields and quiet freedom. She walked the property with Mr. Carter, reviewing the trust she had built for the next generation. The land will stay in the family, she said. But responsibly. Mr. Carter smiled. You've built something strong. Mary nodded. Stronger than before. That evening, she sat on her porch, watching the sun fall behind the fields. For the first time since David's death, she felt peace. She had protected her home, her future, and her dignity. The war was over. 3 months passed. Mary's children kept their promises. Slowly, clumsily, but honestly. John took a second job to help repay the debt. Linda attended counseling to confront her controlling habits. Paul sold his boat dreams and started volunteering at a local senior center. None of them asked for forgiveness directly. Instead, they earned small pieces of trust with consistent actions. Mary watched quietly from a distance. She didn't rush the process. Healing would take time. But she saw real effort, not manipulation. And that gave her a quiet, cautious hope that her family might grow into something stronger than before. One Saturday afternoon, Mary visited Linda's house for the first time since the confrontation. Emma and Jake ran to hug her. Grandma, we missed you, Emma said. Linda approached carefully. Mom, thank you for coming. Mary nodded. I came to see the kids. And to see progress. Linda swallowed, then said softly, I'm still learning. Mary answered, good. Keep learning. Paul arrived later with groceries. John came after his shift at the warehouse. The family sat together, awkward at first but honest. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough for now. With time, Mary's story spread through Mildfield. Older women asked her for advice. Neighbors whispered, did you hear what Mary did? She fought back and won. Mary didn't feel like a hero. She simply felt like a woman who refused to be erased by grief or age. She began writing her experiences in a notebook David once used for farm records. Page after page, she wrote about trust, betrayal, strength, and healing. One evening, Emma peeked over her shoulder and asked, Grandma, are you writing a book? Mary smiled. Just writing my truth, sweetheart. Others might need it someday. Months later, the family gathered at the ranch for a small reunion. They walked the fields together, laughing gently, speaking honestly. Mary watched them from a distance, her children older, humbled, more human than before. Emma joined her and slipped her hand into Mary's. Grandma, I want to study law. Elder law. Like the detective. Mary's heart warmed. You'll be amazing at it, she said. And you'll protect people who need it. Emma smiled proudly. Mary felt something settle inside her. A full circle moment. Her pain had created a new purpose in the next generation. The lesson had reached deeper than she ever expected. As the sun dipped low over the fields, Mary stood quietly, taking in the place she fought so hard to protect. Her children approached behind her, softer than before. Mom, John said, we'll spend the rest of our lives proving we deserve a place in this family again. Mary nodded gently. Then keep walking forward. And never forget what you almost lost. Linda wiped her eyes. Paul whispered, thank you for not giving up on us. Mary smiled softly. Family is not about perfection. It's about learning. And as they stood together in the golden light, Mary knew the truth. She hadn't just protected her legacy. She had rebuilt her family.